December 5th, 1945. 5 Navy Avengers, 14 men, a routine training flight out of Fort Lauderdale under clear skies. Lieutenant Charles Taylor had 2,500 flight hours. Every tank was full. None of them came back. No wreckage, no oil slick, no bodies. Flight 19 vanished so completely it gave birth to the Bermuda Triangle legend, and the chain of events that erased them began with a single compass reading. On the morning of December 5th, 1945, the routine unfolded with military precision at Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale. Flight orders were signed off by the squadron clerk, listing 5 Grumman TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, each loaded to capacity with 258 gallons of aviation fuel, enough for over 4 hours above open water. The assignment was a textbook navigation exercise known as Navigation Problem Number 1 to the Hens and Chickens Shoals, north to Grand Bahama, then west back to base. The triangular route covered more than 450 nautical miles, with each waypoint plotted in advance, and every crew briefed on expected times and headings. Weather reports issued at 1:20 in the afternoon left little room for doubt. The sky was clear, visibility stretched 10 miles, and a gentle southeast wind brushed the airfield at 5 knots. The temperature hovered at a steady 78 degrees. No significant warnings appeared on the board, just a routine advisory about possible Cuban radio interference. A minor note for crews accustomed to the static of wartime frequencies. Maintenance logs for each Avenger, filed under serial numbers Buno 53513 through 53525, showed recent inspections and no unresolved mechanical issues. Instrument panels had passed their checks. Radios were operational. There were no red flags. At the center of the operation stood Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor, the senior instructor. Taylor's logbook recorded 2,500 flight hours, most of them in the very aircraft he commanded. He had led at least 15 navigation sorties just like this one, and was regarded as a methodical, steady presence in the cockpit. His assignment as flight leader was standard practice, pairing experience with a group of junior pilots who were still building their hours. The rest of the crew, 14 men in all, took their places with the confidence of routine. Each Avenger carried a pilot, a co-pilot, a radio man, and in some cases, a trainee. Their names were entered in the squadron diary and cross-checked in the day's paperwork. At 2:10 in the afternoon, engines roared to life and the 5 Avengers lifted off, wheels leaving the tarmac in close formation. The initial radio check came back strong. "This is FT-28. Copy. All stations good." The squadron climbed eastward on heading 090 toward the first waypoint. By the time the coastline faded behind them, the operation remained by the book, an experienced instructor, a clear mission, and a sky devoid of threat. Every element pointed to a routine flight, a predictable outcome. But as the Avengers disappeared into the blue, none aboard could have imagined how quickly the ordinary would unravel. At 15:50, the first sign of trouble broke the steady rhythm of the mission. Lieutenant Taylor's voice came over the radio, flat but urgent. "Our compasses are off. We may be off heading." The crew had passed their northern waypoint, but something no longer matched the map. The magnetic compass, a pilot's lifeline over featureless water, now pointed nowhere reliable. Taylor's training demanded a quick cross-check, but each instrument seemed to contradict the others. The directional gyro spun without agreement. The backup magnetic compass failed to settle. Moments later, One of the junior pilots reported that when looking at the sun, it was not where it should be. The Avengers held formation, but the sense of control began to unravel. Taylor ordered that they change course to 090 for 10 miles. Instead of correcting, the squadron flew further east, away from the Florida coast, and deeper into open water. Radio traffic grew tense. Crewmen compared headings. Some believed they were over the Florida Keys, others insisted it was the Bahamas. The sea below, expected to be shallow turquoise, turned to a pale, unsettled white. A clipped report said they were entering white water. The color of the ocean, once a comfort, now deepened the confusion. The pilots had trained to read the water, but nothing in their experience matched what they saw. The radio log from this period reads like a series of overlapping questions. What's our heading? Are we north or south of the Keys? I don't know where we are. Each plane's crew tried to plot a fix, but the compasses refused to cooperate. Taylor's voice, steady at first, began to betray strain. All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together. The squadron's cohesion, drilled into them by months of training, now worked against them. No one broke formation, no one peeled away to search for land. The group pressed on, trusting their leader, even as the instruments and the sky offered no clear answers. Fuel gauges ticked lower. The radios crackled with static and doubt. The mission had slipped from routine to crisis, and the margin for error was gone. At 19:04, the last radio transmission from Flight 19 crackled through the static. Lieutenant Taylor's voice, strained and unsteady, delivered the final decision. He said, "We will try to ditch when the first plane drops below 10 gallons." The logbook entry recorded the moment. Fuel reserves were now too low to reach any known land. Each Avenger, once heavy with gasoline, hovered on the edge of empty tanks. The squadron, still locked in formation, faced the reality that none would break away alone. Radio contact, already faint and riddled with interference, faded further. Attempts to triangulate the flight's position came up empty. The only certainty was Taylor's plan. The group would make a coordinated ditching, all 5 aircraft attempting a water landing together. There was no panic in the words, just the clipped urgency of men, out of options. The sea below was somewhere between darkness and white-capped confusion. No further message followed. After that final call, the airwaves fell silent. The Avengers vanished from both radar and radio, leaving behind only the unanswered question of where they went down. The official record would later note this as the last known point of contact, fuel exhausted, fate unknown. At 1800 hours, the base's communications officer triggered a full search and rescue operation. Orders went out across the eastern seaboard, mobilizing surface ships, cutters, and patrol boats for a grid sweep that stretched from the Florida coast to the Bahama banks. The scale was unprecedented for a peacetime mission. 9 ships and 4 aircraft deployed within hours, each assigned a sector based on the last known transmission. Navy logbooks list the USS Cyclops and several Coast Guard vessels steaming through the night. Searchlights sweeping empty waves. Radios tuned for any sign of distress. Overhead, 2 PBM-5 Mariner flying boats, each with a crew of 13, launched from Banana River at 1920 hours to fly a square-pattern search over the projected ditching area. Tragedy compounded the loss. One of the mariners, Buno 59225, vanished from radar less than an hour into its mission. A nearby merchant ship reported seeing a sudden flash, an explosion in the sky. No wreckage or survivors were found. The Navy's after-action report would later attribute the disappearance to a probable fuel tank rupture. But the result was the same: 13 more men lost, their fate as uncertain as the crews they were sent to rescue. The search continued for 5 days, covering more than 250,000 square miles. Not a single trace of Flight 19, the Mariner, or their crews was ever recovered. The ocean had swallowed every clue. The Navy's Board of Investigation delivered its verdict with the weight of official language. Navigational error, compounded by a misreading of the islands below, led Flight 19 astray. The board summary, drawn from radio transcripts and drift calculations, concluded that Lieutenant Taylor likely mistook the shallow cays of the Bahamas for the Florida Keys. This single misidentification in a region where compass deviation was known but rarely catastrophic was enough to send 5 aircraft off course. Simulations run decades later, using reconstructed headings and estimated wind drift, confirm that even a small error, less than 15 degrees, would have carried the Avengers far from their intended triangle. At cruising speed, the squadron could have crossed into open Atlantic waters within 90 minutes, making reversal impossible once fuel ran low. Investigators found no evidence of sabotage, mechanical failure, or sudden weather change. Maintenance records, fuel logs, and crew rosters matched perfectly. The compasses failed, but not in a way that could be traced to a technical fault. Human factors, stress, fatigue, the pressure of command were considered, but nothing in the record pointed to panic or breakdown. The most likely scenario remains a tragic chain, a misread heading reinforced by group cohesion, and the relentless sticking of emptying fuel tanks. No wreckage, no oil slick, and no debris ever surfaced. In the end, the official file closed with a phrase that still lingers: cause unknown. The ocean and the mystery held their secrets. 79 years later, the Atlantic keeps its silence. Advanced sonar and satellite scans still find nothing, no debris, no answers. Experienced pilots, routine orders, clear skies, and yet total erasure. The ocean's verdict remains officially unknown. Some mysteries refuse to surface. What do you think happened out there?